Hi, my name is Halbert Katzen. I'm the creator of the UB The News Project, an independent project by Urantia Book Enthusiasts. And I also created the ubannotated.com website as the place to be a resource for the Urantia book study aids that I've created and have compiled from other people. I created one called Genetic Introductions, Mutations, and Evolution, a Urantia book perspective. That study aid is narrowly focused on providing some structure to a presentation of the Urantia book's teachings on that subject. And as such, there's a lot left unsaid. And the topic raises a lot of questions and issues for people that I'd like to address at least a little bit of that now and provide some perspective that I hope will be helpful in a number of ways. Excuse me. I'd like to provide a perspective that I think will be helpful in a number of ways, both for understanding the study aid and also for just uplifting the general cultural conversation we have about racial issues. The way I look at this issue of racial diversity is that it allows humanity to get value, cultural value, in ways that we couldn't get if we were all the same. And over time, I think as we learn collectively to incorporate these values into our culture and into our souls, and as we, blend genetically, then these differences won't be so important to humanity. But I think we need to grow into it, and that the racial differences are God's way of helping us along with a certain process. And describe the process this way. I'm talking about soul growth, or character development would be another way we could think about it. So there's certain things that not even God can do, like the impossible. Specifically, some things are either or, better or worse. It's not just like a bowl of fruit where there's all kinds of different variation and they're all good. A simple way to think about this is that parents want their children to be stronger rather than weaker, to be more intelligent rather than less intelligent. These are values that are quantitative as well as qualitative. And so because of that, life is easier or harder for people in relationship to whatever qualities they may have in terms of quantity. This difference, easy versus harder, is what allows souls to grow wide and deep. When life is easier, when we have more strength or more intelligence or more of anything that's generally considered good, that there isn't so much of it that it's out of balance, then that makes life easier and it widens our opportunities in life. And that widening, it relates to the soul and the character development, to have those choices. If we don't use those choices wisely and well, then that opportunity gets wasted and our character becomes spoiled. Now, when life is harder, that creates soul depth of character. And this quality narrows opportunities in life, or I should say the lack of the quality in question narrows opportunities in life. So if we're not as intelligent, our options aren't as wide. If we're not as strong, our options in life aren't as wide. So this dichotomy between easier and harder is what allows souls to grow wide and deep. The balanced relationship between these two things can be thought of as wisdom, as the breadth of our soul, our ability to move back and forth between what we've learned from how life has been hard and what we've learned from how life has been easy gives us a flexible wisdom with which to interact in the world and to make our lives and everyone else's lives better. So this is how I think about racial differences, and this is how I relate to them. If I were to just put it in a very practical sense of what it means to me, and how I tend to relate to this, I put it to you this way. Imagine there's two churches, and each church has the same beliefs. One's a black church and one's a white church. One generally populated by what we would think of the black race, and one generally populated by what we might think of as the white race. Now, you don't have to accept my definition for whatever that is, or even to accept the differences. I'm just trying to explain how I personally relate to this. Now, if I need a hug, I'm running to the black church for a hug. If I want a Bible study group, I'll go to the white church for the Bible study group. Because if all other things are equal about the churches, and the only difference is the inherent racial differences of the church, I'm going to see that the black race has suffered from having less intelligence than the white race. And because of that, there is a depth of soul that is extremely important when life is hard. And life is hard for everybody in different ways. It's not as though race is the only thing that makes life easier or harder. If I want more intellectual width in my life, I go to a Bible study group at a white church, and generally speaking would expect to find a better experience there because there's differences that way. Now, for me, when I look out in the world and I see the conflict in conversation about all of this, what I see is it's like I'm sitting in the back seat of a car, and there's a driver and there's a navigator, and they're arguing with each other. And the navigator's saying things like, hey, you wouldn't know where to go if it wasn't for me. I'm the most important person here in this vehicle. And the driver is saying, we wouldn't get anywhere if it was left to you. You would point us in a direction and we go nowhere. And they just fight back and forth about who's better and more important rather than working together to get somewhere. And I'm in the back seat going, can't we just work together and get somewhere? For me, it's like number one and number two in a math class fighting with each other. And number one saying, I'm first. And number two saying, well, I'm twice as much. Can't we just join the set of whole numbers and get along? I mean, do we have to, do like that with it? So this is what pains me when I look out into the world and see how people think about racial differences and relate to them and the process of it all. What I see is humanity's set up so that certain types of character development or soul growth can be accentuated through the races. Depth of soul is accentuated in the black race because of differences that make life easier and harder. And it's just that simple. The ease gives white people, generally speaking, more width, not more depth necessarily. They'll have to get their hardship in other ways. And this is why we have these cycles that get talked about in terms of human behavior patterns. Hard times leads to strength of character, and strength of character is foundational to the creation of easier times. And easier times can lead to underdevelopment and weakness of character. And underdevelopment and weakness of character creates hard times. And hard times leads to strength of character. So, how do we get out of this cycle is by using our strengths, what makes life easier, in a way that rather than being lazy about it or spoiled about it, we get ambitious about it and want to bring out the best of those aspects of ourselves, and we make life hard on ourselves that way. And when we're willing to make life hard on ourselves to balance out how life is easy on ourselves, then we can develop that strength of character that gives us both width and depth, and develop the wisdom to meet all kinds of different situations in life gracefully. I think you get the idea, so I'm not going to go on any longer about it than this. I hope you've enjoyed it and it's made your day better. Thanks so much for listening. God bless.